I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My topic today is to love me is to know me. And this is on religion, romantic love, and projection. Gabor Mate has one son, Aaron, who's one of my favorite journalists, another son with whom he's written books. But it is his wife, the invisible member of the family, by whom I am utterly intrigued. In an interview with Russell Brand, Gabor has said, "My wife is allergic to romance. Whenever she sees me putting her on a pedestal, she says, 'Stop that. You'll only make me pay for it later.'" What a wise woman. One of my daughters is in a long-distance relationship, which is making her boyfriend even more romantic. He is picking out their procession song, and she's saying, "Can we just spend some casual time each on our phones? I need a little time to feel familiar again." And she's saying, "This seems like a lot of trouble for you to visit, requiring trains, Ubers, and hotel rooms." And he says, "How many dragons may I slay for thee, milady?" or something to that effect, which is leading her to ask, is this really about me, or is this an image that he has of himself? And I think that's a question that takes a lot of courage to ask. At an aerial performance on Friday night, I met a charming guy whose opening line was that he had just bought alien abduction insurance. I assured him that we were all conspiracy theorists there, and he was in good company. His daughter of the heart, who he'd come with, was one of my favorite aerial buddies. And so it was a really fun time. He was a sensitive guy and cried at one particularly moving performance. The show was emceed by my dance teacher, Gina, who changed into 3 different costumes, including Superman and a sombrero and stash. And she made each introduction both personal and hysterical, which reminded me why, when we do our Commonwealths and take back over, why live community amateur performances are so important. There's something different about live than dead. And so this was really a magical evening. And at the end, she came up and said to this guy, "Make sure you get her phone number." I was getting seriously smitten vibes. And I wasn't wrong. When we texted the next day, he told me I was grounded, clear, centered, open, knew when to close, more than an empath, a smart clairvoyant. I asked if he got that from my videos, and he said my videos espouse extra spiritual value. We arranged to meet for coffee the next day as soon as it opened, and he signed off, "Sweet lover of life, you have any number of affirmations, mentally, physically, and especially spiritually. I adore you." During our 4-hour coffee date, one story just led to another for him. When I managed to get a word in edgewise, he would stare into my eyes and then say he loved my mind or my hair, and then get back to where he left off. He had us hold hands in some tribal technique and then asked me to tell a story about my father. 3 times he announced that we were getting married and took the ring off of his finger and put it on mine. He said that we had been very happy in a past life. Extra points if you've seen the past life technique from the hilarious J.P. Sears on how to be a spiritual pickup artist. Then I drove us to the beach where he put his arm around me, had our first kiss by the ocean, and held my sweaty hand on the way back. Since he didn't have a car, I offered him a ride home to his trailer, stopping by my house and giving him a tour on the way. Afterwards, I had a 5-hour dance intensive, which I went to, but then stopped halfway and went home, poured myself a whiskey over ice, and watched the sunset in order to process. At that time, I got a text from him saying, Perhaps you are now, after your intensive, in a spiritually, mentally, socially, physically, particularly satisfying place. And you'll text me a question to which I will reply with every word bringing tender, compassionate mercies to the world. Instead, I talked to my daughter and debriefed for 3 hours, then went to bed. Mid-morning, I sent him an apology, saying that I didn't feel I could match his energy, but was grateful for how he made me feel and happy to have met him. He shot back, "Teresa, did you get my email? I wish for mutual encouragement rather than a relationship. In other words, you can't reject me. I rejected you an hour ago." I checked my junk folder to see what this mutual encouragement was. It stated my view on religion as echoing Karl Marx, that religion was the opiate of the masses, and it gave 6 books I should read by modern science scholars and professionals who are betting there's an eternal outcome from acting as if God exists. This list includes Francis Collins, head of the NIH, and a woman who worked on the Hubble, and Ben Carson. All, he wrote, have found their scientific understanding and religious beliefs to be mutually enriching rather than contradictory. I tossed back my leftover watered-down whiskey and laughed. For the first time in my life, thanks to all of you, I can laugh at this without reservation. There was a time in my life where I would be kicking myself for once again thinking that someone wanted to hear my ideas without sex as a bribe. But now, 2,000 of you say otherwise. I know that there are people who do want to hear my ideas. And so when someone says, "Here, little girl, read these 6 books before you open your mouth again and embarrass yourself," it doesn't land. It's a double whammy. You don't want to assume that a guy is attracted to you. And besides, economics and ultimate reality are both my way of flirting and my gender-neutral small talk. So then it turns out that he thinks that you're just blathering nonsense because you're attracted to him. And instead of blaming him, you turn around and blame yourself for being an idiot once again and thinking someone's interested in what you have to say. There's the old adage, to know me is to love me, but I think it should be the reverse. To love me is to know me, because every pedestal is a projection from which you will be toppled as soon as you speak your mind and not his. And those empty words of affirmation are just a way of shushing you because he didn't understand a word of what you just said. It's a particular cruelty, I think, to put a woman on a pedestal and then make her pay for not meeting expectations. It makes her feel foolish for having believed anything, and it makes her not trust herself. And in reality, we do deserve to be adored. It just makes life better. There's that Oscar Wilde saying that she was plain but would have been pretty if someone had told her often enough she was beautiful. It makes everyone just bring a little more out of themselves and makes life just a little more interesting. Isn't that what we want? The oldest form of superiority or cold hatred is men over women that only turns hot when it's challenged. So why not let sleeping superiority lie? That has worked for me in the past when I have gotten to be one of the boys, like I was with the tonic masculinity guys. They liked me just fine as long as I said nice things about them and didn't challenge how they were using my term of tonic masculinity. It was only when I started standing up for that they showed their true face, and amusement turned into anger. And I think that that revelation is important. Conflict, however, comes at a cost and is exhausting. I don't feel that you can create conflict. I think you can only bring it to the surface and show it for what it really is. And I think that's necessary. I'm not conflict adverse. But there are some who are saying that this is a time during the holidays when they think people will be ready to hear the truth and that that's an important thing. I don't know if I agree, even though I really respect the people who are saying that. I think that so far the damage has been done, but the consequences of it are not yet fully evident. And the more that people feel guilty, the worse they often behave. So I think you should feel your way out and see whether people are ready to hear things. In a best case scenario, they come to you and say, I'm thinking maybe you were right. And I'm seeing these things and connecting the dots. And if you can't imagine that, they're probably not ready. What's the similarity between romantic love and religious worship? They're both ways, I believe, of projecting the ego onto another person or a deity so that they're a reflection of the self. It's a pretense of selflessness while really making the ego invulnerable because it becomes the object of your devotion. So you can then be praising yourself in another form. The most ruthless people I've ever known in the business world were religious. And the most moral people I knew outside of it were also religious. Because that's what you get with a God who's a projection of yourself. Would the moral people have been immoral without having religion? Certainly not, because caring for other people was what came first for them. Would the ruthless people have been just as unscrupulous without religion? Certainly, but they wouldn't have gotten away with it, because religion, like government, is a way of justifying the immoral, and morality doesn't need religion or government to justify it. And what's up with a God who doesn't want to be known? That seems like a God who doesn't make sense and doesn't want his authority to be questioned. Love wants to be known. The most sincere form of love is giving attention. I don't know why we call it paying, as if it's a transaction. Any time that you have a real conversation, that you read deeply, that you really understand what someone else is saying before you respond, all of this just adds to the light in the world. It doesn't compete, take anything away from anyone. It doesn't try to impress. Having to agree is beside the point, literally, because the shared question is the quest. The wild enthusiasm that this guy brought to meeting me wasn't a mistake, was it? The mistake was making it conditional. His former pickup line, before he came up with the alien abduction insurance, was that he taught workshops on how to start your own cult. So that got my mind racing. In the cult of Terrania, everyone is afflicted with Tourette's syndrome, where you can't stop blurting out nice things that make people feel good about themselves. The churches are dance studios with ample kitchens. The gods of Terrania have many names, and they love everyone unconditionally. They're hiding in every person that you meet, just waiting for an invitation to come out and play. Isn't that the cult that you want to join? For more on cults of affirmation, this is the Utopian Imagination, where I suggest that our Utopia Planning Committee fall madly in love with each other and rigorously challenge ideas while adoring the person. And this is we need to agree, not on the answer, but on a purpose, a process, and a plan. Thank you for watching.